This video is brought to you by Sailrite. Here you can see a plain window in a dining room. In a few steps, we're going to be installing panel drapes with tiebacks. We'll be showing you how to install those and also how to make the panel drapes using Sunbrella Furniture Fabric from Sailrite.
Hi, I'm Matt Grant with Sailrite. Today we're going to show you how to build panel drapes with tiebacks, and we're going to hang them on the window behind me. The first place to start when you're looking at decorating is figuring out what fabric you want to use. And Sailrite recommends Glenraven Sunbrella Furniture Fabric for interior projects like this. These fabrics are extremely durable, color fast, and they're very stain resistant. And there's a wonderful selection to choose from. You can purchase these fabrics at sailrite.com. And in front of me here I have the book that we started with to select our particular pattern, and you can see that there are wonderful patterns, stripes, and of course solid colors to select from. And the particular fabric that we selected for our job is right here, and our drapes are actually done right now. In a later segment of this video you'll see how we put these together, but what we're going to do right now is we're going to show you how to hang them. Go to sailrite.com to purchase your fabric, and once you have your fabric in hand, then you just need to go to your hardware store to pick up your drapery rod and your holdback hardware if you decide to use hardware as opposed to ties to hold your panel drapes back. So now we're going to move the video into a double time motion, and I'll stop at pertinent points to explain what I'm doing. Alright, everything's unpacked now. So we have our rod with the finials on the end, and we have our hangers, our holdbacks are out, and I have some basic tools: screwdrivers, hammer, level, drill bits. I'll explain the cardboard paper here in a little bit. We may not use all of this, but these are the basic tools that will be necessary. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to figure out how high we're going to mount the curtain rod, and a lot of that is preference. And while we're talking about height of the curtain rod, we're also going to discuss the size of the panels that you're going to build. And since this is a panel type construction, typically what you want to do is you want to make it such that when you pull the drapes out of the holdback, that the panel will cover the width of the window, obviously to give you the privacy that you're looking for. So our window in this case is about 32 inches, including the trim, and that means that our panels need to be a minimum of 32 inches. The standard in the industry is about 40 inches, which allows for a little bit of gathering so it doesn't look like a completely flat panel, and that works pretty well. There's also another size that is roughly 54 inches, and that would allow for a much fuller looking curtain when the curtain is tied back. But in this particular case, my wife likes a lot of light, so we're going to go with the 40-inch width so that when the curtains are tied back, it doesn't obstruct too much of the window. The other consideration that you want to keep in mind is when I put the curtain rod up, how wide do I want the curtain rod to be, and how high above the window do I want the curtain rod to be? And as a general rule of thumb, the higher you put the rod, the bigger the windows are going to look on the inside, and the more dramatic the looks will be of your window treatments. So I personally always like to raise my curtain rods above the window frame at least 4 inches. In this case, I'm going to go 4.5 inches, which is pretty consistent with what I've done through the rest of the house, and gets it pretty close to the crown molding and gives me room to work with the bar. And also my curtains have about a 1-inch flap at the top that just hangs loose up, and it'll stick upward. And so I'm really going to be at about 5.5 inches after the complete installation. So, but the point here is that this is all personal preference. Mount the curtains where you think it's appropriate, what you want. There's no right or wrong, but just keep these things in mind. The biggest thing is, how much do I want to close off the view for the window? If I go wide and put my finials out further and my bracket out further, I can actually bring my curtains back to the point that they only cover the trim and don't cover the windows at all. So that might even be something you want to do. But for our particular installation, we're going to go 4.5 inches up, and we're going to come out maybe an inch on each side. And I think that's going to look very nice. So that's the way I'm going to go. I've also got this chair molding here. So when I do the tiebacks, normally I like to see the tiebacks at about 1/4 to 1/3 of the distance up the window. Obviously I can't go 1/4 because I don't want to be below my chair rail here. I'm going to put my tiebacks basically right above the chair rail on both sides. So, all right, now we go back to double time, and we'll start hanging this stuff. I'm setting my 4.5 inches at the very top of the bracket, and you noticed a little bit ago that I also tightened up these brackets to push the bar all the way in. I don't need them to come all the way out. If I need to adjust that at some point later, I can adjust it. If you want to be really critical about angles, you can put a small level on this and level it, but I typically just level them by eye, and that's good enough. So we've got our center position. Now we come over and bring our bracket to do the sides. And again, we want that 4.5 inches. This time though, I'm going to go about an inch out, I think is what we said we were going to do. Use the tape where I can get that inch. Actually, yeah, let's go an inch. Actually, I'm going to go 1.5 inches. Inch and a half. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, next thing is when drilling, I have a tendency to start with too small of a drill bit as opposed to the 3/16 inch drill bit that is often, although I would check your hardware instructions, I believe 3/16 would be about the right size for this anchor. Depends upon what they send you. But if I drill a 3/16 and then I happen to hit a stud, I've got too big of a hole in my drywall. So I always start with too small of a drill bit, and we're going to drill them. And hit wood. Same thing. So I don't need an anchor there. Gonna need an anchor there. And obviously there as well. No anchor. Okay. Now, I hate using anchors anyway, so if you can hit a stud or hit some wood in there to get the screws in, it's always nice not to have an anchor. And we are in good shape there. So now that we have the holes drilled, let's go back and put the anchors in over here. So I am going to go to the 3/16 inch drill bit. And if you're not 100% sure, basically, you just want to make sure that the shaft of the drill bit is about the same size as the widest portion, a little bit smaller than the widest portion of the anchor. It does look like 3/16 inches, right? anchors essentially are just tapped in place. At least these light duty anchors are. Okay, so we're happy with all of our holes now, and now it's just a matter of mounting the brackets. And the nice thing about these brackets is they have a keyhole. Some of them don't have a keyhole, and you have to do them with the screwdriver. In this case, since there's a keyhole, I can actually put all of the screws in with a drill. Finish it off with the screwdriver. Anchors just need to be snug. If you over tighten them, you can strip them out. Alright, that's really all there is to mounting the hardware. So now we take our bar apart. Actually, we can do a couple of things here. We can take the bar apart and feed the curtains on, or we can take the finials off the ends and do it that way. I always find it easier just to leave the threaded finials on and take the bar apart. And our curtain, or our panel, and obviously these are called panel draperies because it's really nothing more than a panel. We want to make sure that there is an inside and an outside to this, and we're going to put the outside obviously to the up against the window. At the top, we've created a curtain rod sleeve. This is the extra material, which I thought was an inch, but it's more like 2 inches. That's going to hang up. We should still have plenty of room for that, and we just need to push our rod through. Oops, we need to push it through from this end. And sometimes it helps to have a helper. Certainly on bigger windows it's necessary. On this window it's not such a big deal. Notice these curtain rods are adjustable in width. So the width is simply adjusted according to the amount of overlap that you have between the two rods. And that width is held when we tighten down the screws on the brackets. This is a particularly tightly woven and fairly thick Sunbrella fabric that we're using. You can see that it does a good job blocking the light. If you want more of a sheer, there are sheer materials available in the Sunbrella line from Sailrite as well. Now at this point I just need to decide how far I want the finials to protrude, and I want to get them nice and even. So I'm setting the finial so that it's about 1.5 inches out, and now I'm just going to lightly snug the screw in the bracket. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing at the other side. Again, all of this is preference. Could go 1/2 inch, could go whatever, 1.5 inches. Just want to make it symmetrical. Okay, that keeps my whole bar from moving. And now I just need to tighten the center. And we're good good there. All right. Next thing we do is the tiebacks. All right, we already talked about the tieback position being a preference, but what you can do is just gather your material and hold it back to where you think you would like it to be and have somebody look, do I want it down here? Do I want it up higher? What looks good? And I'm still of the opinion that it's going to look best just above the chair rail here. And part of the reason I'm doing that is I would like to sort of maintain the same looks that I have throughout the rest of the house. So that's where we're going to go with the tiebacks or the holdbacks. And we're going to do that now. All right. Our holdbacks have basically the same anchors, so we're going to use the same 3/16 inch drill bit for those. And there's a simple little trick that you can use to position the holdbacks, because the holdbacks won't, so here's one of them. If we were going to have this pulled back like so, you typically want to put the holdback in so that it's at an angle, about 45 degrees or so. The angle's not that critical. But the problem with that, and let's get this panel out of the way so you can see what we're doing. I'm going to slide this panel, Eric, all the way out of the way. Okay. The problem with getting an angle like so is, how do I make sure that I get the angle to match on the opposite side? I want a symmetrical look to it. And I'm going to show you an easy trick to do that. But before we do that, we should talk about placement of the holdbacks. It could really be up against the window trim, away from the trim. I like to have the right edge of the panel be as square as possible, coming down the wall, not angled back. So if you're going to bring your bracket only out 1.5 inches or so, you really want to bring your holdbacks pretty close to the trim, because this is the edge, or the outer edge of it's what's going to matter, and that gives you a pretty nice vertical look. So what we want to do now, so we know we want it roughly in this position. So I want to set this aside. I like to use a couple of small nails. You're going to need a hammer. Doesn't really matter what size those nails are. And then we need a piece of paper. The stiffer the paper, the better. And what we do with this is, this piece of paper had one edge that was the factory cut edge, so I know that's a straight edge. So I fold the bottom up so that these edges are directly on top of one another, which gives me a nice 90-degree angle here. So when I hold this paper on my chair rail, I've got an edge going against the trim, an edge going against the chair rail. Now I can take my holdback and position it where I want it at the angle that I want it. And I think I'm going to go right about there, and let's go with an angle like so. Again, not super critical. But now, instead of marking it, I'm going to take one of my nails and I'm pushing the nail in through the paper and into the wall. I guess I don't really need the hammer for this because this isn't wood that I'm going into. And I'm going to do the same thing at this spot. Okay. Now I've done two things. I've marked the wall for where my screws are going to go, and I've also created a template. Now I take my template over to the other side of the window and I'm going to flip it. So as you're watching here, I'm going to flip it this way. So slide this panel out of the way. Now I can use the chair rail. Again, that's my height. If I didn't have a chair rail, I'd have to measure up from the floor or from the bottom of the trim to get the same height. And now I've got my holes, and I just use my nail. Punch a couple of holes. Pretty slick. Nice, easy way to do it. Nothing critical in the way of taking measurements. So now we go back to our 3/16 inch drill bit, assuming there's no wood there, and you already know that I take the long way around doing this stuff, so I'm going to go with the smaller drill bit first, and we're going to make sure we don't have any wood back there. I'm going to assume there's nothing over here. Nothing. Yeah? Okay. Got wood in the one hole. All right, so we only need 3 anchors. 3/16 inch drill bit again per the hardware we were sent. Anchor hole there. Okay. Let's tap our 3 anchors in. And now we have no keyholes here. Some designs are easier to install than others, but most of these are a pain because you got to get your screwdriver around the decorative end piece.
All of the curtain or drapery hardware is now installed. Now we just do a little bit of a cleanup and we show you the results.
Yeah, all right, we're done. Our panel drapes are up. We just need to basically pick and pull at them until we're happy with the way they sit. But I did forget to mention one thing, and that is the length. Length of the drape is not that critical. It depends upon the window that you're working with. You do want them obviously to cover the window, and you want them to come down at a pleasing height. For a normal window like this, it's typical to have drapes that hang about 52 to 54 inches, somewhere in that range. I think these worked out to about 53, and I think you'll agree when we're done here that they really turned out just perfectly. So I'm going to bunch this back in a manner that is pleasing to me. And now I'm just going to gather the material and bring it into my hold back. And I'm sure my wife will redo all of this tonight the way she wants it, but that's roughly what you do there. And there you have it. And we'll step back, and then we can play with those to our heart's content. And you can see we want to make them even at the tops. Looks to me like we're pretty good. Beautiful. Thanks for watching another free video series from Sailrite. Find us at sailrite.com, and it's your turn to pick your fabric now.
Next in this series of video is how to build or sew the panel drapery fabric that we purchased from Sailrite. Be sure to watch that video next. It's your loyal patronage to Sailrite that makes these free videos available. Thanks for your support.